It's great to be here with all you guys today in Amsterdam. It's a beautiful day, so thanks for being inside with me and the other presenters for a bit. My name is Justin Gerrard, and I lead our marketing and creative talent acquisition efforts for our video products at the Meet Group. And been there, well, the Meet Group a few months now. Before that, I was co-founder of a mobile dating app for black singles called Bae, which stood for Before Anyone Else. And this talk is basically twofold. At the first part, I'll just talk a little bit about my entrepreneurial journey before getting into the dating space. And then the second piece will be around helpful strategies, low-cost strategies that we use to drive a lot of growth for our business, specifically around press and influencer marketing. Great, so just to quickly go through the agenda, a bit about me, a bit about Bae. We'll talk about press, what type of press works, and really kind of the strategies around curating authentic stories and narratives that are going to work well for your business, because a lot of the challenges with getting press are not having the right story that's even going to give you press. And the second piece is around then nurturing the relationships. A lot of press can be transactional in nature. You want to maintain those relationships, ideally over the life of your business, so you're not having to continually go out and find new press relationships. For influencers, we're going to figure out how do you find influencers, what are the best platforms to go to, and then what to spend. Going after influencers can be a little harrowing experience when you're going out and you're on these different platforms and people have different sizes of followings, but how do you actually know who to go after? What are the kind of analytical strategies that you can use to see if they're going to be good at driving the right engagement for your business? And then we'll end with some key takeaways. So just a bit about me. I started my career at Microsoft as a product manager, putting together case studies for our enterprise business to incentivize customers to purchase Microsoft Office. That was a little bland, and so I decided to go back kind of into the consumer space, worked at American Express on our prepaid cards business, specifically with one of our major partners, which was Radio One, which is the largest conglomerate of black-owned radio stations in the US. After that, I went to business school, but then decided to drop out because I was working on Bae, which again is a mobile dating app for black singles that I co-founded with my brother and another co-founder. Did that for about 2 years. We launched in April of 2015, and then our team was acquired by If We, which is the makers of Tagged and High Five. And then about 6 weeks ago, our company, If We, was acquired by the Meet Group. So now I'm there doing marketing and talent. So a little bit about Bae. So the reason why we created Bae, which stands for Before Anyone Else, is because there's an unfortunate bias that exists within mass market dating apps as it relates to black singles. So some of you may be familiar with the OkCupid study, where it showed that 82% of men who weren't black had a negative bias against black women in dating, meaning they didn't want to date them. And moreover, black men and women typically received the lowest attractiveness ratings of all their ethnic groups. So based on that quantitative research, but then also qualitatively talking to a lot of our friends, black men and women, we wanted to provide a better experience for daters within that space and decided to launch our app. So we launched in April of 2015. After the first month, by May, we had about 17,000 users. Over the next period, the next 2 years, we registered as a top 50 lifestyle app in 20 African and Caribbean countries and grew to a little over 200,000 users before our team was acquired by If We. And so it's a bit of a wild ride, a lot of ups and downs, but we didn't have a lot of money to do all this. So hopefully some of these strategies are things that worked in terms of two channels that were very effective in low-cost acquisition of users at a very nascent phase of scaling the business. So, press. We got covered a lot in mainstream media without using any PR. So I'd like to understand by show of hands, how many of you use traditional PR or agencies right now? Okay. How many of you do not use any PR, just like have reached out to press? Okay. And how many people just don't do anything, you're just not really sure what to do? Well, I guess, okay, one. At least you're being honest, I appreciate that. The thing that we learned about press is there's kind of two ways to approach it strategically so that you're creating the type of stories that people are actually going to want to read on kind of the consumer end, and on the press end, stories that they're actually going to want to write about. And so what we found was those two different ways to think about press we're thinking about in terms of authenticity and then controversy. And so I'll get into that. So what type of press works? We found that really focusing on authentic stories was a great way to position ourselves as a brand. And we tried to think about it within the context of two kind of story arcs or narratives. So when you're creating press for your business, authenticity matters, particularly within a new context of social media where everything you do is now going to be scrutinized by not only consumers, but press, et cetera. So you want to make sure that you're authentic to your brand. And so when we thought about those story arcs, there were two things that kind of stood out that we thought would resonate with press, but would also resonate with our consumers and strategy. The first is we're three black guys and we're working to solve black love. In the US in particular, only 50% of black adults marry within a lifetime. Let that settle in. It's a pretty harsh environment for that. So a story around three black male co-founders who are working to solve that challenge was something that we knew would resonate a lot, not only in the press but within the community in terms of the consumer angle. The other thing is we were three black technical co-founders, right? You've seen a lot of stories around diversity in tech, trying to change the industry. So we wanted to leverage that to our advantage as well, particularly within the context where less than 1% of venture-backed startups have black founders, and of those who receive funding, less than 1% are all black teams. So we're basically kind of like a unicorn in the space, and we want to leverage that the best we can. So a lot of our stories revolved around kind of meeting the men behind the app, creating for black singles, and driving that. The other piece outside of authentic stories was controversial titles, right? We all see those clickbait things where you go on Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, and you want to. I think it's okay to have clickbait titles, but you want to make sure that there's substance behind them as well. So one of the stories that we worked on that got a lot of traction was Donald Trump supporters love black porn, right? And so not only was it a good clickbait title, but there was actually some substance behind it. So what we found is Pornhub actually there's a lot of analytical studies around the findings around their users. And what we were able to find is that in the US, in those states that Donald Trump won most of the primaries, there was a correlation between where the term ebony was searched most for porn. So we were able to tie that in to a story around the fetishization, particularly of black women, and talk about how Bae was kind of this last bastion of hope for those women finding fulfilling relationships outside of just going on these mass market dating sites and not having a great experience. So a title that drew people in, but then some substance behind it that resonated with our users and would ideally drive them to take an action to download or to share about the brand to their friends. And so the confluence between kind of authentic stories and controversy really worked well for us in terms of the type of narratives that we wanted to tell, but how do you get this press, right? Now that you have the stories, how do you find the press, and ideally at low cost, right? So in terms of getting free press and nurturing relationships, what we found is about a 70 to 75% hit rate in literally just reaching out to writers in our space using Twitter. If you're not using Twitter now as a tool to reach out to press, it's actually great because they're on it all the time. That's a lot of the ways that they're disseminating their content, and they're typically pretty open about responding back. If you do your research, right? So if you read, some of the work that they've done can respond back with a thought. We typically found that led to a DM conversation that then led to a phone call and then a lot of pieces after that. So it's definitely a great channel for you to leverage if you're looking for ways to find press without having to get a big agency. The other thing is nurturing relationships. So I think this is incredibly important. I think a lot of people think about PR now as more transactional, right? I use my PR agency, they go out to a bunch of writers, hopefully one of them writes about it, and then you wait another 3-6 months or the next quarter cycle, and then try to reach out to another batch of people within that space. Nurturing relationships with the writers, particularly if you don't have a lot of money, is really important because ideally if you created the right type of relationship, you can have multiple pieces over the span of your business with the same writers, with the same large community, without having to always go back to different writers. So one of the things that we found that worked really well was creating a newsletter for highlights around our business. So what we did was people who wrote about our business, but also those who are either writing about tech or about relationships, we added them to a newsletter, and then once a quarter we would send them updates about the business. And what we found is that we actually had more press articles written about us after sending out some of these newsletters. So one of the examples was we got into the Facebook Start Accelerate program. And after we got into the program, we sent out just an update as one of the many things we were working on in our newsletter. And actually the next day had about 3 pieces written about us getting into the Facebook Accelerate program because they just found out about it through the newsletter. So a lot of times writers are looking for content. So as much as you can help them and build the rapport, that relationship, found that worked really successfully. The other piece is around going to events. And it makes sense, it's intuitive, right? You want to make sure you have as much face time with the people who are writing about your business as possible. If you're just reaching out over social media, that can work, but if you're able to have an exchange at a conference or go to industry events, we actually found that pieces will come out about our company through doing that. In addition, if they're going to decide between writing about your business or a competitor, if they have a relationship with you, they'll probably be more apt to reach out to you to talk about your business. So the next piece is around influencers, right? And for purposes of this, I'll focus more on social media influencers because that's where we had the most experience with working with Bae. And so what is this whole social media influencer thing about? Right here you see an activation that Kylie Jenner did with Bumble, and a lot of brands are trying to use that as a new way to engage their audiences. I think that influencer marketing in particular will continue to grow as a practice within marketing. So I think that outside of traditional paid channels like Facebook ads or Google ads or even using affiliate networks, right now those networks are very low priced because Facebook and Google are trying to get traditional ad spend away from television and radio and bring more people into digital. So as those rates start to go up, having an influencer marketing strategy or knowing how to find the platforms to find influencers as well as what to spend will be helpful as you scale your business. And all of this kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of trial and error, but hopefully on the next slide we'll kind of talk about the right platforms that we found that work really well, as well as how much do you spend and some analytical frameworks around how to do that. Okay, so how do you find influencers and what to spend? The 3 best channels that we found for finding influencers are YouTube, Instagram, and agencies. YouTube is a great channel because not only do you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of subscribers with some of the top YouTubers, but these are people who are really only creating 2 pieces of content a month, and they have tremendous loyalty from their followers. So if you ask those fans to take an action, they're way more likely to do it because of the strong affinity they have for these new players. Also, the YouTube stars are becoming kind of the new reality stars or television stars to a certain extent as people gravitate away from traditional like television and the way they consume content. Live streamers, YouTubers, etc. will start to become kind of the new stars within the space. So found that as a great platform. Instagram is great because you not only have it's not only very high engagement on those platforms, but you have a great combination between individual influencers, but also niche affinity pages. So if any of you have spent any time on Instagram or even Twitter, you'll see these pages that have to do with memes or funny content, love, etc. They're great opportunities to partner with some of those pages that honestly have more engagement than some television networks in some cases. And so there's a tremendous arbitrage opportunity in terms of the relative costs of working with traditional media versus using a tool like Instagram to find value there. In addition, Instagram has really great analytical business tools. So if you set yourself up as a business account on Instagram, you can see the number of impressions that each post gets, the number of clicks, the number of shares, etc., and use that as a content strategy. So when you're partnering with people, you know the type of content that's going to work really well on their page or the type of influencers that will likely work well based on the analytics that Instagram provides. And then the third piece is around agencies. So agencies are great because as you scale out your influencer activities, if you're kind of doing, it was good for us using YouTube and Instagram at first because we had a relatively small team. But as you're thinking about building out your efforts, I know that a lot of companies now who are actually gravitating to video literally have teams of 40 or 50 people literally just focused on bringing in influencers. But it's also a great way to package deals in terms of your spend. So if you go to an agency that has a strong relationship with a lot of influencers in a specific niche, you can typically get better deals in terms of what you're spending on those influencers. You'll probably notice that I don't have Facebook, Snapchat, or Twitter on there. For Facebook and Snapchat, it's not that those channels don't work well, it's just we didn't necessarily use them as heavily as Instagram and YouTube in terms of being able to really measure the benefits analytically. But Twitter, I would actually, and I'm not sure how many of you maybe use Twitter now, but I would actually stay away from Twitter because typically when people see content on Twitter, they're only engaging with it for a period of like 20 minutes. And that engagement is a lot more fleeting than on YouTube and Instagram. So found that Twitter, particularly with influencer engagement, isn't the best place to go. So once you've kind of figured out the platform to use, now it's like, all right, well, how much money do I actually spend? I see these influencers, some of them have 250,000 followers, some of them have 1 million. How do I know if it's actually going to be relevant to not only my users, but that I'm going to get a lot of great engagement? So there are there's kind of three ways to think about how to know what to spend in terms of leveraging a strategy to do that. The first is a comment to like ratio. And basically, what you want to do is find a high number of comments to likes based on an individual post, because that's going to show you how engaged the actual users on the page. And the higher percentage of comments to likes, the higher engagement on the page. You typically want to have between 3 to 5%, I would say, with a minimum of 250 likes to 300 to really get a sense of whether or not that content is going to resonate. So if you go to a page that, let's say Ray J from the kind of Kim Kardashian scandals, he has like 1 million, he has 1 million followers, and on his post he was getting like 20 comments and 1,000 likes, whereas another page, a popular meme page, they have 240,000 followers, but they're getting, 300 or 400 comments per post within a day's period of time. So having a ton of followers doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting the same kind of engagement. So using that ratio typically helps. The other thing is the time in between posts. So a lot of times you'll see a post on like Instagram or YouTube, and it will have 10,000 comments, but you look at when the post occurred and it was 3 or 4 months ago. Typically, when you're thinking about when you're going to get the highest engagement for social, it's going to be between the first 24 to 48 hours, and then there's like a long tail effect of about 2 weeks where you'll get some engagement. Any longer than that, then the numbers are going to start telling a bit of a different story. So it's just another way of thinking about the time between when people are doing posts in terms of if you should work with that person. The other piece is, and this is particularly for people who have apps, is think of every comment, and this isn't an exact science, but think of every comment as almost 1.5 downloads, right? Each of those people are very engaged, so you get a bit of what we call in the tech space a K factor, or how many people that person invites once they join your platform. You get about 0.5 from that. So that's a great gauge. So when you're thinking about how much you want to spend on an actual influencer in terms of how many downloads you think you're going to get or how much engagement, look at your customer lifetime value, look at your average, look at your ARPU, and then kind of work back into some of these frameworks for pricing out how much you should pay. So I wanted to kind of leave you guys with a case study of how we use some of these frameworks to drive a viral moment for Bae. So on Instagram, we kind of scoured to find a niche Instagram page. It wasn't necessarily an influencer page, but was a niche page targeted at Black women, which is our key audience. As we all know, you focus on the women in dating, right? If there are enough women on there, then the men will come. So that was a big part of our strategy. And we found a social page with a core Black audience, 18 to 34. It was a gossip page that has about 9 million followers and very high engagement. And what we did was we knew that for this particular demographic of women who are looking for men, attractive men, that a piece of content that would work well is just a really attractive male user from the app. So we took one of the profile images of an attractive user from the app and then put together a very authentic caption in the voice of that page to drive people to download the product. Basically, the vernacular that people use for the page are roommates. So, hey, roommates, we were swiping on the dating app Bae and found this profile. Is this what the men look like on Bae app? They done changed the summer, right? So something very much authentically within the voice of the users.
How many cases do you have like that?
Probably over the course of business, like,
Three, but I think it's one or two stories to find such guys that have low prices and people.
so this is just one channel that we use to drive these type of moments, like through Instagram. I would say that in terms of getting, multiple, like thousands of downloads in a single moment, it's probably 5 to 10 of these type of campaigns we're able to drive. So for this one in particular, after we did the post, we had over 5,000 downloads within a 24-hour period that we could attribute just to this post. We spent $350, and the added benefit was that we began to trend in the App Store as well because we had so many downloads within a truncated period of time. So when you're able to really take great content and find a page that authentically speaks to the type of users that will associate with your brand, we found that you can create kind of some of those viral moments that also help with kind of brand awareness, et cetera, but also with performance marketing. And so just to end with some of the key takeaways. First is that with whatever you're doing, authenticity matters. I think that's been a key theme of a lot of the presentations today. You want to make sure that everything you're doing is authentic to your audience, whether you're working with an influencer or you're trying to find press. People are very discerning on these social channels now in particular, so you want to make sure that everything is authentic to the vision of your brand. Second is Twitter is great for press, but you have to make sure you follow up. It's not enough. If you want to just have a transactional relationship with press, that's fine, but you're only going to have that one interaction with that writer. If you nurture that relationship either through using lists or following up, going to events, you're going to have a way longer lifetime with either that press outlet or that individual that's going to actually lower the amount of time that you're actually reaching out to press and have an evergreen effect in terms of more press that you're getting. The third thing is clickbait is fine, but make sure it's substantive. It's really hard within a contemporary context, 2017, to cut through the clutter of everything that's going on online. So to the extent that you can use visuals or titles for the different pieces of content that you're working on that elicit an emotion, that's great, but make sure there's substance behind that so that the next time someone sees a piece from you guys, they're still going to want to engage with it and there's still value there. The fourth thing is around YouTube influencers. YouTube influencers are probably like the best place to get influencers. They have very, very sticky and loyal followers that are probably the most prone to taking action when you're doing a campaign. So if you can find a good cohort of these individuals, you can drive a lot of growth through that. And the other thing is, 1 million followers doesn't mean a million downloads, right? Just because someone has a large Instagram following or large YouTube, Twitter, et cetera, the proof is in the pudding. Look at the engagement metrics. Look at kind of the analytical structure that I put together as a framework to help you, to help you find the right type of content. Is it always going to work in every single case? Not necessarily, but at least provides a framework of another channel that you can use to drive growth and to have an authentic connection with your audience. And finally, most importantly, test. This is probably a big thing, in the Bay Area. It's like all we do out there is kind of create MVP models and then we test. We're testing every platform all the time, different channels. These are just two of the channels that work well. We also did a lot with events and using Facebook ads, Google ads, et cetera. These are some of the more low-cost solutions, but there's going to be a tremendous number of platforms, and you can use a lot of these frameworks to figure out what's going to work well for your business. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So you talked about the newsletter.
Yeah.
So we've used newsletters as a way to engage investors, and I think everyone in here is probably getting our regular newsletter as a way to sort of engage the wider community. If you're not, you will. How did you go about creating a newsletter for journalists? Like, how many people were on there? What kind of content did you send out, and how frequently?
Sure. So we sent it out on a quarterly basis. We had about 60 to 100 members of the press on there, either people who had written about us or people who are within the industry. And then in terms of the actual content, It didn't need to be, but so flowery. For the most part, it was, a short paragraph on what we've been up to, and then 3 kind of key bullet points that were takeaways. So, did we get additional funding? What were new features that we were launching? Did we get into new programs? Did we trend in the App Store over like an interesting story? The Donald Trump supporter of the black porn, right? Like, did they hear about that? So that was the content that was in the newsletter.
Nice.
Yeah.
And everyone else can have questions in a minute. I wanted to ask about the Facebook Accelerator. What was that like?
So Facebook Accelerator is great. They had a program for entrepreneurs who are leveraging Facebook as part of their business. So we had Facebook login, and we were basically part of their beta program to test a new product. So they had a product called Account Kit, which is like a one-click sign-in. They would reach out to us for just kind of advice on how we're scaling out our business and how Facebook can be involved. Basically a way for them to support kind of growing partners within their within their ecosystem. And it was like 3 black guys and made them look good. Just keep it real. So that didn't hurt either.